I pulled off the highway later than I meant to. I'd been driving since early morning, and by the time the sun went down, I was already fighting that heavy, unfocused feeling behind my eyes. The B&B wasn't planned. It was just the only place that showed up on the map within 30 kilometers, and I didn't trust myself to keep going. The listing photos looked old but harmless enough. Floral curtains, mismatched furniture. The kind of place that survives on being the only option for people like me who didn't plan ahead. When I arrived, the parking lot was empty except for a single dusty sedan with no plates. The building looked older than the photos, like the paint had faded several shades since they were taken. I remember thinking it didn't matter. I just needed a bed and a door that locked. The owner was an older woman who moved slowly, like every step required thought. She didn't smile, but she wasn't unfriendly, just tired. She handed me a real metal key attached to a wooden tag with the number 3 burned into it. No check-in forms, no ID, nothing. She only said, "Breakfast is at 7, and pointed me toward the stairs. The hallway upstairs was narrow and smelled faintly of old carpet and something else I couldn't place at first. Maybe stale cooking oil or damp wood. My room was at the end. The door stuck when I pushed it open, and the hinges made a strange sound like they hadn't been used in a while. Inside, everything was clean enough, but it felt like a room that had been closed up for a long time. The air was still and slightly cool, even though the radiator was on. I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped more than I expected, and for a moment, I had the strange sensation of someone having just gotten up from it. I shook it off. I was exhausted. When you're that tired, your mind fills in things that aren't there. I tried to settle in, but something about the room made it hard to relax. It wasn't anything obvious. It was more like the proportions were subtly off. The ceiling a little too low, the window a little too small, the furniture arranged in a way that didn't make sense. The wardrobe was angled toward the bed instead of the wall, like someone had dragged it there and never bothered to straighten it. The mirror above the dresser was tilted downward, forcing me to look at my own chest instead of my face, unless I crouched. I kept telling myself it was just an old house. Old houses are strange, but the longer I sat there, the more aware I became of how quiet everything was. No traffic from the highway, no voices downstairs, no pipes, no wind, just a thick, padded silence that made me feel like I'd stepped out of the world for a moment. I decided to take a shower, hoping it would shake off the unease. The bathroom was small, with a single dim bulb that flickered once when I turned it on. The water took a long time to warm up, and even when it did, it never got more than lukewarm. I stood there anyway, letting it run over me while I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. People stay in places like this all the time. Not every night has to feel comfortable. When I stepped out, the mirror was fogged except for a small clear patch near the bottom, like someone had wiped it earlier, but only reached that far. I stared at it, trying to figure out why it bothered me. It was just strange, too deliberate to be random, too low to be useful. Back in the bedroom, the air felt colder, not freezing, just enough to raise the hair on my arms. I checked the window, but it was shut tight. The radiator was still warm. I sat on the bed again and tried to read something on my phone, but the signal was weak and the screen kept freezing. Eventually, I gave up and lay down, pulling the blanket over myself. I didn't fall asleep right away. I kept shifting, trying to find a position that felt natural. The mattress had that uneven, lived-in shape that made it feel like someone else's body had carved out the space before mine. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a faint pressure on the other side of the bed, like the weight distribution wasn't quite right. I told myself it was just the springs. At some point, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember is waking up with the sense that something had changed, a shift in the atmosphere, like the room had been rearranged while I slept. I sat up slowly, my heart already beating faster. The wardrobe looked closer to the bed than before. I couldn't be sure. Maybe I was remembering it wrong, but the angle was different. I was certain of that. I got up and pushed it back against the wall. It scraped across the floor with a heavy, dragging sound that felt too loud for the hour. When I stepped back, the room looked normal again, but the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. I felt exposed. I checked the hallway. It was empty. The lights were off, except for a faint glow from downstairs. I thought about leaving right then, getting back in the car and driving until sunrise. But the idea of walking down that narrow hallway, past the closed doors, past the owner's room, felt harder than staying put. So I went back inside and locked the door. I sat in the chair by the window, watching the empty parking lot. The sedan was still there, unmoved. No sign that anyone else was staying here at all. I stayed like that for a long time, too afraid to lie back down, too tired to think clearly. The dread wasn't sharp. It was slow and heavy, like a weight pressing down on my chest. Nothing was happening, but everything felt wrong. The room felt wrong. The house felt wrong. The silence felt wrong. By the time the sky started to lighten, I'd made up my mind. I packed my bag without bothering to fold anything and went downstairs. The owner wasn't there. The front door was unlocked. I left the key on the counter and stepped outside, breathing in the cold morning air like I'd been underwater all night. When I got in the car, my hands were shaking. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't want to see it in daylight. I just drove until the B&B was far behind me. And even then, the feeling stayed with me. That quiet, suffocating wrongness. Even now, thinking about it, I can't explain what exactly frightened me. Nothing happened. Nothing touched me, or spoke to me, or moved in front of me. But I know what fear feels like. And that night was the purest version of it I've ever experienced. Thanks for staying until the end. If you're enjoying these kind of stories, hit like and subscribe. It really does help this channel grow. There is a full playlist on your screen right now if you want to keep going. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, sleep well.